Norfolk is an awesome city. I love it for a lot of different reasons. And the people I know love it too. And people come here and move to specifically live in Norfolk. That being said, there are some real big positives and negatives. This video tackles a few things that you need to know if you plan or consider moving to Norfolk in 2024. And number 5 specifically is one that I think that is going to shed light on stuff that is going to be happening in Norfolk that will affect what life will be like in Norfolk moving forward. The first thing I want to talk to you about is when people want to move to Norfolk, it's so fun because the houses are so cool. The houses have so much character to them. They're older a lot of times, 1920s, 30s, 40s. It's got that charm that a lot of the other parts of the area of Hampton Roads just doesn't have as much of. And that's what makes Norfolk often so appealing. And people love these houses in Norfolk and love the architecture. Well, the drawback, though, is that if you do want to live in Norfolk and buy a house in Norfolk, you have to prepare for surprises. So the number one thing is have an emergency fund ready for if you buy a house in Norfolk. Why? Because there are a lot of things in these houses that can go wrong, even right as you move in. So, you look at the magazines, you look at all the cool pictures of nice kitchens, nice big wide open windows, tall ceilings, the nice gleaming wood floor, all the things that make a old character-laden house so fun. You see all that stuff, you're like, well, I want that for myself. I want to be able to live in a house like this. Well, these types of houses come with a price, and they can come with extra sticker costs beyond what you might be paying for at the actual sales price. Stuff like old piping that is corroded, broken down, cast iron piping, old windows that might be decades old, that are single pane. Maybe the insulation, you might find that the heat in the house just isn't really cutting it. Maybe old bad electrical wiring, aluminum branch wiring. Maybe you're in a historical district and there are specific guidelines that you'd have to adhere to in order to do renovations to your house. Maybe certain colors, certain types of shutters, certain types of windows you might only be able to put in certain parts of Norfolk. Those types of things really add a factor and add cost to your renovation project and just the general upkeep of the house you buy in Norfolk. So it's like the opposite of a new construction house. When you buy a new construction house, you're buying a house that's brand new inside and out. Well, with a Norfolk house or a house that has a lot of character in it, you're buying a house that is built maybe in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, but they are renovated on a shell that is much older. And you start doing all the renovations that seem really fun, which they are. They look great. But when you do those renovations, there are things you might find behind the scenes that you just didn't expect might be part of the renovation project, which increases those costs. So just like if you're planning for a surprise event in life, prepare for an emergency fund for your house. The next thing I want you to know about moving to Norfolk is that the proximity from very expensive houses to very cheap houses can be very, very small. So let me show you an example of what I'm talking about. So if you go, for example, over towards Ghent, I mentioned again Ghent. Ghent could be anywhere from $400,000 or $500,000 up to over $1 million. But once you go into Park Place, crossing over 21st Street over into near Collie East, near this area in Park Place, you're going to find houses in the 200s, 300s, and 400,000 price range. And then going back to Colonial Place, you're back into the 4s and 5s and 6s along the water in some cases. And so then going over towards ODU, Lambert's Point, over towards Kensington, these are back into the 2, 3, and 400s again. And then going further north from there, Larchmont is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, $1 million, 1.5 along the water. So there's a drastic change as you only go a few blocks here and there from one part of this section to the other. But then going further north from there, Titustown, this area, you're going to find houses in here like 225. 250, maybe even 200 sometimes. Then going further into Algonquin and in Riverfront, these are going to be 5 and up, $1 million and up on the water. Amazing, like real quiet, big, wide open views of the Lafayette River. And that kind of goes across a lot of parts of Norfolk. They can feel a lot different, and the prices can be a lot different in a very short, close proximity. So this is something to focus on if you want to buy a house that might be near other houses that are priced higher for appreciation. And also, if you buy a house that's $750, make sure you know what other neighborhoods are nearby. And if you're buying the only neighborhood neighborhood that is that price in the general area, just know the pros and cons to that. So the next thing to know is know what Ghent is and what it isn't. What do I mean by that? So if you look on the map, I'm going to show you where Norfolk is. You see Norfolk here, all over here on the western side away from Virginia Beach, right here. Well, Norfolk's a very big city, but in the southwestern corner, you've got Ghent. And Ghent has tons of character. It is the place that people often come to if they want to live in a unique kind of eclectic neighborhood, vibrant, old houses, big columns and porches, and that kind of like relaxed atmosphere, but near shops and restaurants and fun little mom and pop places and a walkable atmosphere, plenty of streets to walk down, parks. Well, that's what makes Ghent great. And you look at also too, going towards West Ghent, you've got Chelsea, which has some cool restaurants over there. And also going closer towards The Hague, which is down closer to this Chrysler Museum. A lot of history, a lot of like museums, awesome houses. Badatot Gardens, which is on the eastern side of Ghent. Well, that is all fantastic, and it makes Ghent worth moving to, I think. But keep in mind that where you are in Ghent can be very, very frustrating if you plan to live in Ghent. So where you are, seeing where this is not a very convenient place to get out of. And so if you live in Ghent, it's great. If you want to, commute, for example, over towards the beach, you are going a long way. I mean, it's 30 plus minutes to get from Ghent over towards Virginia Beach, over towards even the Oceana Naval Air Station, towards Princess Anne, 35, 40 minutes in a lot of cases. So the frustrating part about this is that while you're in Ghent, it's great. Once you leave Ghent, it can be very frustrating to maneuver. And so I would keep that in mind if you do plan to live there, and make sure you know how comfortable you are to commute to work and to places you want to be outside of Ghent before you actually move there and commit to that process. Next is there are almost virtually no new houses in Ghent or anywhere close to West Ghent, Chelsea. And so people will say, well, I want the character. I want the nice feel of the neighborhoods, but I also want a newer house. That doesn't really exist here. You might find some that are almost new. It might be pushing up in price, over $1 million in a lot of cases. Most of the time, I for example, I have a friend that lives in Ghent. In that situation, they were able to build a row house in The Hague. That was a very unique situation, but that was almost, I feel like it may have been one of the last lots in Ghent. So my point is that doesn't really happen as much anymore. And so if you do want the character, you got to accept the other types of things that come with the character, like the old house, as opposed to getting that new house. That if you want a new house or that type of dynamic, you might need to go to Chesapeake or Virginia Beach to get that type of thing satisfied. Another thing is you have walkable access to things in Ghent, but you don't have any grocery stores to choose between. You've got, for example, Harris Teeter, which is right off of Colonial Avenue right here. But then going further north, you got a couple, like Fresh Market over here is a Food Line, and an Aldi down here. But other than that, there's really not a whole lot. You have to get a Walmart or a Harris Teeter or a Kroger. You got to zoom out to go to the rest of other parts of Norfolk or even Virginia Beach or Chesapeake to get a larger assortment or sampling of different grocery stores. So once you get into Ghent, you'll know the specific spots that you'll feel most comfortable because they're probably the closest. And otherwise, you may have to drive a bit farther to get really what you want shopping wise. Now, the next thing to keep in mind when you move to Norfolk is that flood insurance is a real thing, but it's not everywhere. Every house, in theory, can be considered in a flood zone. It's just a matter of which zone requires flood insurance. And so there are places in Norfolk that definitely fall in that range where you need flood insurance. There are some places that don't, though. And so just because you're moving to Norfolk does not mean you're going to automatically be paying flood insurance, but you need to not assume the other way either. When you go buy your house, check with your real estate agent, check with the flood zones of FEMA flood maps, see where the house lies in relation to those flood zones that need flood insurance, which is the primary one is AE. That will be the most common you'd see that would require flood insurance. Otherwise, you've got X500 and X, other two primary that don't. Again, keep in mind that these flood maps change, and especially if you're going closer to water, especially even over towards like Larchmont, the western part of Norfolk. I've seen more of these areas require flood insurance in the past several years than before. So just be prepared for flood insurance if you do move to Norfolk. But the lines are drawn so specific that you might be, 5 feet or 500 feet or a mile away from a place that requires flood insurance, but you're not actually in it. And these lines are drawn so specific. For example, I worked with someone once last year that we were buying a house, and the flood insurance line that the AE line drew right across the corner of the house. And if you look on the overhead view of the map, the line on the house the actual, like the black line, the computer line, intersected with the line of the flood insurance. So what the insurance company said was that they required flood insurance because it touched the house. Well, then what I realized was that that black line was a representation of the gutters that were over the house. And so we went over there, I measured the gutters and showed the length, the width of those gutters away from the house to show that that line, that flood zone line, was actually on the gutters and not the house. Because of that, they then said that the house did not require flood insurance. It's that precise sometimes as far as if a house needs it or if it doesn't need flood insurance. So the next one, I think this is very interesting, is the city has character, which we've talked about, but it's ripe for change. The city is ripe for change. Why do I say that? Well, there are a few things that I think are getting some facelifts or lots of redevelopment in a relatively short period of time. One is going to be over towards Lambert's Point. I've talked about the rail yard before. That's a new spot near Hampton Boulevard, and it's kind of an older section, and it's being transformed right now, and some shopping and some restaurants and like new spots. If you want to be like in Larchmont or anywhere close to there near Old Dominion, great spots to go to. But then in addition to that, Park Place, in the South Park Place, you're seeing a lot of, you see these great coffee shops, restaurants, a good pizza place. More little shops are coming up on the north side, just past Ghent, but on the south side of Park Place, which I think is going to keep extending into different parts of town. I think it will change that whole section from industrial kind of older feel, kind of like near Lambert's Point we just talked about at the rail yard. Kind of like that here, but there'll just be more options to have more things put in the middle of this industrial part of town. So I think that is also an intriguing spot to, if you want to buy a house near there, I think you could see some appreciation there. Then, of course, you've got the casino, which is over towards Harbor Park. I'm not a big fan of casinos myself, but that is going to bring more tourism, more intrigue to the downtown southern part of Norfolk here in the next couple of years. In addition to that, the Neon District is not just currently going through changes. There's a lot of new restaurants and things happening in there, but also there's a new apartment complex being discussed that is going to be put in at the old bus station, the Greyhound bus station around the corner of Granby Street and Brambleton Avenue, that I think also could be a nice focal feature of the Neon District. But then on top of that, the big one, this is going to take the longest, is MacArthur Center Mall. This used to be the place to go for malls in the late 90s, mid 90s, early 2000s, mid 2000s. This was the spot. People loved MacArthur Center Mall. It is now a shell of itself. There are the places I wanted to cry when I was there, I don't know, a few months ago. Walked through, had to go through there for something. I actually parked my car at MacArthur Center Mall and walked through. The stores, the anchor stores, gone. Places like J. Crew, Apple, like those big brands, Williams-Sonoma, all gone. And the places that are replacing them are just the small little stores that, they're getting a lot cheaper rent, I would imagine, but you don't see them anywhere else. They're just individual places, and it just doesn't have the same feel as it used to. And it's a shame because it's a massive building. Back in the 90s and 2000s, this was the place. It was the center of town. The city now owns this mall as of last year, and so now they're trying to determine what to do with it. And I think that in the next several years, there will be some development, apartments, new housing, outdoor spaces, restaurants, shops. I think there's going to be a lot more development in MacArthur Center, the area of MacArthur Center, that is going to change the complexion of the center, what is I think has always been the focus of downtown Norfolk. So the benefit of having a city that has a lot of character in it, that is a lot of newer, that feels really nice in some places, but also some places that need some renovating. When you do the renovations to those spots, it really lifts the whole city up. That's why I think the city of Norfolk is ripe for some great changes in the next several years, because you got new things that would be being put up in and around a lot of old, historic, and in-demand spots nearby, like Freemason, downtown Norfolk, and Ghent. So if you have any questions about relocating to Norfolk, Virginia Beach, all through Williamsburg, let me know. It's what I do. I love helping people relocate to the area. So if you have any questions, I have my contact information in the description. You can email me, call me, text me, and I'll do whatever I can to help you relocate to the area. And I will see you on the next video.